Welcome, everyone, to The Greater Good. This program was established over a year ago to focus on individuals that I personally believe do something more than just write a check for worthwhile organizations. These are the people in San Diego County and otherwhere that actually put boots on the ground and are major contributors to any number of activities throughout the county. With me today is another person who fits that profile perfectly. Ken Gilden. He's a friend of mine and also lead instructor for a program that he runs out of Alpine called animalfirerescue.com. It's a nonprofit. If you're interested, you can see his information at the bottom of the screen. Make sure you send him some money. So welcome to the show, Ken.
Thanks, Jeff.
So have you ever been on a podcast before?
I have. I did one for Eric with ASAR last year, I think it was, or the year before. We did ours not video though; it was just audio cast.
Oh, right. Well, we like to see the handsome and the beautiful faces, and our listeners like that as well. And speaking of listeners, I'm told that we have about 50,000 people that watch this show. Is that right, producer Sarah? Sarah Morga is producer extraordinaire. Yeah, even when the technology doesn't work, we go to the flag system. So, Ken, tell us a little bit about Animal Fire Rescue.
So, Animal Fire Rescue, its mission is to save animal lives using fire rescue standards. One of the gaps that we bridge in that rescue community is being able to bridge the gap between animal rescue groups, kind of like San Diego Humane Society, and the fire department. We're able to bridge that gap in a way that brings fire department standards into the training so that the fire department is a lot more comfortable having animal rescue groups come in and work with them.
So I know this for a fact, but maybe the listeners would be interested to hear about this. So is it true that if you use particular rescue equipment on an animal, say a horse or a canine or a cat or whatever the animal is, that it then it needs to go out of service if it was used by the fire department? Is that accurate?
Close. It's large animal that would designate that. If the fire department was to use a set of gear, let's say rescuing a cat or a dog, that wouldn't. And the reason why, it has to do with weight. And so there's a safety ratio that most departments like to have on their gear. And so a typical fire department won't go much over. They look at their maximum rate on a 2-person load or a rescue load is around 600 pounds, thereabout. So when you start getting into the weight of a horse, 900, 1200, they can go even bigger than that. You've gone outside that weight ratio. And so as far as a safety standard, most departments won't have it. They won't use their gear once it's used on a large animal. They won't use it on people.
So all the more reason for organizations like you or San Diego Humane Society with their emergency response teams to become active participants in these events.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're, and the fire department shows up now, if they've got a team that's gear that's allocated for that, but most don't. Even the bigger departments, to have just gear sitting aside, waiting for that once in a while animal rescue to happen in their jurisdiction. Animal rescues are what we call a low frequency, high risk event. So we have to train for them all the time, but they don't happen very often. Working with San Diego Humane Society, like you and I do, we respond throughout the entire county and sometimes even out of the county. So we use our gear a little bit more. If you were, just a city like Alpine, for instance, a small fire district, you may use your gear. If you had, gear set aside for animals, you might use it once every 10 years. Unfortunately, a lot of the gear will age out before they even get a chance to use it. Ropes and stuff, software, do we call it, about every 10 years, you need to be replacing that stuff anyway. So they could conceivably, if they set gear aside for animals, it would time out for them and they never even used it.
So if you're involved in a technical rescue or rescue behind fire lines in a major fire event, are you compensated for that work?
No, I mean, you and I belong to San Diego Humane Society's emergency response team. And so they'll do a pretty good job of compensating us for fuel that we use. And they do a pretty good job logistically on a large event, getting food and water to us so that we're not, covering that ourselves. But
Right.
we're volunteers. It's our time, our dime that we put in to doing
Right.
this thing. So it's not, you better enjoy doing it because it's nothing you're going to get rich on.
That's for sure. So what qualifies you individually to be the lead instructor for this
So
animal fire rescue group?
so I started out my career as a firefighter. I was started out even younger than that as a lifeguard. Did all the lifeguard courses all the way through when I was just a little kid. My best friend's mom taught the lifeguard courses, so we went through the lifeguard courses from about 10 years old on. And then when we were old enough to actually be
Wow.
certified, we got certified. Then I joined the Idlewild Fire Department and did that for several years. Fire Academy, spent my time doing that. Jobs were a little tight back then when I was doing that back in the late 80s, early 90s. So I went back to school, became a chiropractor, did that for several years. And now I've kind of circled back, still a chiropractor, but now I get to put all that fire department skills to use and put it into this. I also, being up in Idlewild and, being part of rock climbing, the rope rescue stuff is just a natural fit for me. So when we get into technical rescue part of stuff, the rope rescue part of technical rescue it just always felt very comfortable for me.
Yeah. Well, it's apparent. So what classifies as a technical rescue?
So we run two basic types of things. You alluded to the Wildland fire evac. That's a situation where, animals are behind a road closure in a fire environment and they can't leave. They can't get in the car. They can't evac themselves, and animals are property. So once the owners are out and away, they can't come back and get them. So we would do a whole evac. That would be Wildland fire evac. Then to your question, what is a technical rescue? A technical rescue is any situation where an animal is in a situation that it can't free itself from. It's a little different than the evac. They're home, they're safe, and the situation is actually coming to them in the means of a wildfire versus a technical rescue where they've got themselves into a situation that they need to get out of.
Mm-hmm. So how often do you train?
I personally train pretty much every day on something. Either I'm reading on something, working on coming up with trainings and ideas and concepts, or new gear for animal fire rescue. I'm working on some projects right now. As you know, we have a thing called a slide, green glide, that we have to put the horse down on when we need to hard them up a hill. It's kind of like a stretcher for a horse. And the problem with that unit is that it's very big and it doesn't roll up or it doesn't move up. Where the fire department has had stretchers that they've had similar to that for years that they can roll up. So we're working on a project right now of trying to develop a product that we can do and roll that up and make it a little more practical. As far as team trainings, I train with San Diego Humane Society. We do our technical rescue trainings once a month. We also do our wildland fire trainings. That's broken up into a lot of different groups that train. As you know, you're part of the mobile team. You also cross over into the scout team with me. And so there's another 4 or 5 trainings a year into that. Also, Animal Fire Rescue provides what's called RT 130 or Wildland Fire Safety Annual Training. And that's an actual state mandated course that is set as a standard for the national standard. Anybody that goes behind a road closure has to have that course in place. And Humane Society is one of the few teams out there that's actually outfitting their members in fire gear with fire shelters. And so that class actually refreshes all that information for them every year, how to deploy their fire shelters, how to avoid entrapment situations. So it's an all hazards class, but it's definitely focused heavy on the wildland fire aspect of things.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of other training that goes into it as
there is.
well.
I just set my training schedule for next year, and we're having a little bit of an aggressive schedule next year. We bumped it up a little bit, and between trainings for Humane Society, Department of Animal Services, and starting to now do some trainings with the fire departments. I'm right at 29 trainings next year that we'll be doing. So it's a pretty steep run.
I'll say, yeah, better get my shoes in order.
Yeah. One of the exciting things, Jeff, that this just happened today, and we're hoping that we can put it all together. But San Diego Humane Society not only does the wildland fire and then the technical rescue, but it also does water rescue. And so one of our challenges has always been, where do we go get swift water training here in San Diego? It's not like we got rivers running through the center of the thing. Mm-hmm. So I just reached out to the Wave Water Park and just spoke to them today. And it looks like we're pretty close to being on track to putting something together to where we can go down and use their facility. The fire department. Yeah, the Wave Water Park, and we use it in their off time. So we're not in there with anybody else, but we'll be able to use their current generating machines, and ought to be really interesting training.
That's outstanding. So that's the Wave Park in Vista?
In Chula Vista, correct.
Oh, Chula Vista, because there's a Wave Park
or maybe it's in
North County as well.
In North County as well. Yeah, I think they've got one in both. And so the one that we were talking to is, I believe, down in Chula Vista. But this is just all brand new. They just reached out to us. So.
Yeah, I had to go to Wisconsin in that 40-degree water. So I would welcome the Wave in Chula Vista, where they probably have heat lamps. So that's funny. So tell me, in your life in rescue work, what's the most challenging rescue you've ever done?
In the animal world, the one that you and I were on together, I think I sent you guys off a picture so you could post it on your podcast with it, where we had one of our other old team members that is not with the team right now, but still responds with DAS. His horse went down in a pretty good sized mud hole, and that one took some real challenges. One of the things that made it so challenging was obviously the weather was getting cold, and the animal, we were needing to get it out. But the fact that it was such a small hole and the animal had wedged itself in there, as you remember, that was something that we were worried that we weren't going to get him out of there. And that's always the worst case scenario in a rescue, is that it changes from rescue to recovery, and that does happen sometimes. But those are always the worst ones.
I think we were on plan D or E.
D or F on that one, yes.
Maybe F. By the time we got that animal back to safety. Yeah, that was an interesting rescue for sure, for a lot of reasons. Mostly because it was on relatively flat ground, and if just overview looking at it, it didn't look that challenging. But as you've indicated, it got very, very technical for a lot of different reasons. So your motivation to do this as a volunteer, where does that come from?
Well, I come from a family that actually has produced a nonprofit before. My mom created a camp. It's called Special Needs Camp. Years ago, back in the 70s, I think it was 70s, early 80s. And this was a camp that allowed special needs kids to go and experience camp life for a week. And she would spend all year putting this camp together, getting donations to cover everything so that the families didn't have to cover the cost of anything. And all they had to do was just show up. And it was quite an undertaking. It actually got picked up by the first President Bush. He had 1,000 Point of Lights nonprofit programs that he recognized throughout the country, and it was one of those Point of Lights programs. So the idea, and I would volunteer at that camp every year as the lifeguard for that. The idea of doing nonprofit work always just seemed to be kind of something you should be doing when you're moving on in life, and my career in chiropractic's gotten to a stage where I could put the time and the energy and the money to get it started.
Yeah, I call it my giving back program. I mean, you and I are both very engaged in a lot of different things that give back to the community. But you're a really busy guy. You've got this very active chiropractic practice. You've got your animal fire rescue program out in Alpine, where you teach not only people like myself, but also the county's program, DAS. And then you have a family. I've had the pleasure of meeting your dad and your mom and your I'm not sure what Honey is. Is she your girl?
Yeah, wife for all intents and purposes.
She's your wife. Okay, there you go. I'm a beautiful person. So how do you maintain balance in all of that?
Wow, that's a good question. Time management is probably the skill that you've got to manage the most if you're going to try to do all of that. I find that if I plan out ahead of time, there's no way that I cover all the hurdles that I can come up with. But at least if I can try to identify the ones that I can see, that minimizes the number that I might trip over as the year goes on. So, like right now, I'm really actively pushing really hard, getting animal fire rescues training schedule, its budget, its strategic plan for the year, everything. In these couple of months here, we're pushing really hard for what seems like, 2022, it's still, a quarter away, but it really isn't. So.
Be here in a nanosecond for sure.
Yes.
So those are all things that relate to what you do, on your day to day. But what is it that you do just for Ken? Anything?
Yeah. So, I mean, I enjoy motorcycle riding. That's one of my, dirt bikes. I just did a ride with my cousin and his girlfriend last weekend. Was fun. It was a nice, easy ride, but up in Ramona area, just putting a day in of dirt bike riding. That's probably my number one thing. I used to surf quite a bit. Don't do that as much anymore, mainly because surfing requires the fact that you've got to rely on the time to line up with the wave conditions and everything else. Where dirt bike riding, I can pretty much just go. Even if it's raining, I can still go.
I'm amazed at how many people in the county do dirt bike and get out into the desert. I mean, it's very prolific. I have a lot of friends that are real active in that world. So yeah, congratulations.
Well, yeah, and I was really into it before I started Animal Fire Rescue, so much so that I created another. It wasn't completely a nonprofit; it was more of an organization, and it still exists today. It's called Off-Road EMS, and what we were doing was getting paramedics and firefighters that were either current or active, and when we would go on rides and put rides together, those guys would be responsible, like myself, for carrying medical supplies versus carrying tools. You don't need, on a ride of 15 guys, you don't need 15 different sets of tools, but it would be nice if at least one guy was carrying some medical supplies. So
you would hope
that together years ago.
Surprisingly, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, actually, it's not the case. A lot of people don't really think that stuff through, which, keeps people like you and me in business, I guess. So unfortunate. So what is it that this podcast and San Diego Harbor Police Foundation and other what is it that we can do to help you?
Well, I mean, you're doing it already. You're getting me, some exposure here today, and we're getting to hopefully, let people know that there is, organizations out there, an organization out there, specifically Animal Fire Rescue, that's trying to bridge the gap between regular rescue organizations and the fire department. One of those things that we really want to get across to people is that it's very difficult for the fire department. They have to view animals very strictly as property. They don't get the luxury of saying, we're going to get these dogs and these cats and stuff. They really have to do people first. And so the amount of resources that they have to be able to put towards something gets stretched pretty thin, especially in a wildland fire. When you bring in an animal rescue organization, they want to view animals as people. And then the two things just clash, where the fire agency and the rescue organization are having a hard time communicating because they're really talking two different languages. So if we can get something across to the people out there, is that animal fire rescue is going to bridge that gap so that we can rescue the folks that need to, free up the resources for the fire department to do what they need to and getting people taken care of, and then allow organizations like San Diego Humane and Department of Animal Services to come in and actually rescue the animals with it they need to.
Yeah, my experience is that people are often amazed at how well prepared and professional we are. We're not, because we train all the time and we know what we're doing, but the rest of the world, I think, is often shocked. Number one, when we roll in with all of our equipment looking all spiffy in our outfits and all that, that impresses. So that's great. Well, one thing you might consider, Ken, is start doing your own podcast. And you have a lot to say about this amazing product that you put out in terms of training and resources throughout the county. And IQ Podcast, I'm sure, would love to talk to you about that. It's a lot of fun, these things, and you could bring in all your former fire captains and chiefs and all those folks, and maybe do your own podcast. It'd be a great way to get your name out there.
That's a very good idea. Maybe something that we will put on the strat plan. Maybe not next year because it's a little full already, but maybe the following year inside there. I think
there you go.
I think what you've done as far as getting the exposure for the stuff that you do and then just bringing awareness to things is pretty commendable.
Thank you. Well, we're having a lot of fun. So just selfless marketing here, or shameless marketing. The San Diego Harbor Police, we were just nominated, and I'll be going to New York City to collect a big award, a national award, for all of the work that we do with our foundation. And on Tuesday, we're launching a 2-year effort to create what we call Help Stop Human Trafficking. And that's a program that creates awareness throughout the county at no cost to employers, mostly in the tourism industry, airports, hotels, restaurants, that sort of thing, motels, the convention center, where we will provide training to all of their employees at no cost. And it's job specific. So if you're a front desk operator at a hotel, there's a specific training for that. If you're security or housekeeping, or you work at the airport, or you're in security, one of those areas, there's a specific segment within our training for that. So on Tuesday, it's a really big deal. I'll be there with our press conference with District Attorney Summer Steffen, City Attorney Mara Elliott, U.S. Attorney Ryan Goldman, and then the head of the San Diego Tourism Authority. So there's going to be a big lineup. The special agent in charge for the FBI. So local law enforcement and tourism industry, they're really pretty excited about this training. So if you're not doing anything on Tuesday, drop by police headquarters and we'll put you in handcuffs or something. But anyway.
And what you brought up about doing trainings, not charging for them, that's it's been one of our, in animal fire rescue, that's one of our tracks that we pushed very hard and are very proud that we've been able to keep doing it, is that we want to provide these trainings as much as possible, as free as possible. And so, well, I apologize for that.
Nice.
We want to get those trainings set up so that anybody that needs to come get that stuff, can. Now, we can't always get that stuff for free, but we try to get donations as much as possible. One donor that's been very good at the beginning with us here has been San Diego Gas and Electric. SDG&E has sponsors one of our RT 130 classes every year, and we're hoping to pick up some more of those too. It's really a big deal to be able to offer those classes and then be able to say, to the volunteers, there's no charge for that.
Right. Yeah. Well, SDG&E they've really stepped up their game over the last several years in terms of especially wildland fire prevention. They're great partners to have. They've also helped my foundation, so they're prolific in terms of what they give back. So I just want to thank you for your time today. It's great. Always fun to see you. I think tomorrow I'm going to see you again bright and early.
Yes,
We're
we'll
going
be
to be
training. We'll be training tomorrow, both of us.
we'll be getting our hands and feet and clothes all dirty. It's great, great fun. And again, I want to thank my sponsor, the San Diego Harbor Police Foundation, for allowing me to put on this podcast. The people here at IQ Podcasts, producer Sarah in particular, they do a great job. They let me come to their lovely offices here in Coronado. They even put up my own sign in the back there. You know, they pound holes in the wall and let me do all that fun stuff. But thanks again, Ken. It's just great seeing you, and best of luck with your nonprofit. For those listeners, it's down there on a string at the bottom of the screen there. It's talking about his email address and the way you can get a hold of Ken if you want to go to his training. Thanks so much.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Bye-bye.